request host to
Oh,
start
yeah.
cloud
Sorry. I
recording.
don't know why.
Oh, I don't know. Oh,
There it is.
hello and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast and the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I'm going to put this on both because it's so important. I want to get this information out. I have a hero with me today, Tro Kalasian. So we don't have a guest; it's us just chit chatting. I think it'll be fun just to reminisce a little bit, talk about Tro's day in DC yesterday with all the big wigs rubbing elbows. And man, it is just mind blowing to me. I know we've talked about a lot on this podcast, and I said it will never be from the top down; it'll be from the bottom up. We'll just educate person by person, and then make it supply and demand where people are demanding real food. So, Tro, you've done a lot of work on all this stuff. Update us all on the new food pyramid.
Well, let's first start with thank yous. And I know you feel the same way because we've talked about this so many times. The thank yous to all the people who have, over the decades made this happen, right? And I know you feel the same way. If you had to give me your top three, and then I'll give you my top three, and then we could talk about all the, like, our heroes that, made this dietary guideline change happen. So I'll let you go first with your top three thank yous, and then maybe I'll go with my top three thank yous. You know,
Man, just specifically on this, obviously, from a metabolic standpoint, Jason Fung is the hero, and all the work that so many people have done. But the first ones that I thought of when I saw the new guidelines, Professor Tim Noakes, I thought of Gary Fettke, Nina Teicholz,
yeah,
Gary
yeah. Well, you
Taubes.
had three.
There's
You had three.
I know, man. There's so many.
You
I'm
had,
just throwing those all out, and I'll say,
yeah,
gosh, I'll say. I think we're not here without Professor Noakes, really.
yeah,
When I look
yeah,
at all those things, Tim Noakes said, hey, before he said carbs are the way to go. All athletes have to carb load and do all this, wild stuff. And then he said, I was wrong. And he started looking at the data, and he's a guy who surprises me because he looks at all the different sciences. And so he's had a massive impact on medicine that we just don't realize. I don't think he gets the credit or respect that is due to him. But also him and Gary Fettke going through trials, they could have just backed out. They were at the peak of their career. They were told, just don't talk about cereal, don't talk about bread, and you could do all this stuff in your clinic, but just don't talk about it publicly. And they gave the middle finger back to the establishment, and they said, come after us, and they fought him in court. So what those guys went through, and of course Nina Teicholz coming out, that was a big one, talking about saturated fat, meat, and I know she's not real through. I'd love to have her on to discuss this too. With they go, we're ending the war against saturated fat, but then they say you should only have 10% saturated fat. It's like, well, so those are if I just shout them out, those are the big ones in my mind. What about you, Tro?
100%. Everybody you just said. Again, Jason Fung, who's been great to us. I think getting us off our feet with this podcast, but also putting out probably the most important books that I can think of that have reached the most people: the Diabetes Code, the Obesity Code, the Cancer Code, and certainly the one coming out soon, which is the Hunger Code. Hopefully next week we'll be getting to interview him. And
Yeah, we were gonna do it today, but all of our schedules got messed up. Jason had a big meeting he had to go to, so that will be coming. So you can trust us on that one.
But I think the biggest heroes, or the tireless warriors who worked behind the scenes for decades, Gary Taubes is one of them, the author of Good Calorie, Bad Calorie, and so many other books that really
Why
set
we
the
get fat,
stage.
what to do about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Nina Teicholz, who has worked tirelessly for over a decade investigating the issues around saturated fat and being a organizer and advocate, and I know she had a strong hand in a lot of how this dietary guidelines, was fixed, and certainly, our friend, who was on the dietary guidelines scientific group, Ben Bickman, Guy
Yeah. Ben, of
Beal,
course. Yeah.
Jeff Volek, Eric Westman, who wasn't on there, but was also instrumental in this huge
Well,
dietary
and he was
guidelines
instrumental
announcement.
in Professor Noakes looking at this, going, "What are these crazy people doing?" And he looked at it, and said, "Uh-oh." He
Yeah,
reverses his diabetes and all that. Yeah, it's amazing. It's just amazing.
yeah, and then I'm in this hall, Brian, and well, first of all, what an amazing document. I read the 480-page document in its entirety, and it is a well well constructed document with strong scientific basis. They finally valued the interventional trials, which they previously ignored, right? So they actually looked at the science, which is amazing. I think, and if you look at the guidelines, I think they're pretty good. I think it was a political decision to some degree on, what to put forward, how to communicate it, and maybe what not to change right now.
I think it's a
Uh,
stepwise process, right? Because if you
yeah.
overwhelm people with these massive changes, then you lose.
Oh, we lost you. We lost your audio there. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. If you, I think, the poise it took and the approach they took was absolutely, spot on. Eat real food was the primary message. Just eat real food. Who Gary Facke has said,
Oh,
from the beginning.
I'm
Yeah.
back. Somehow
So you're
my I got
back.
excited and unplugged my microphone or something.
No, but you were right. Like the messaging is simple, and I think if they pushed a lot harder, even though if you read when you read the document, Brian, it's like it's so clear. Saturated fat should not be demonized, but they didn't yet change the cap, which I think is what you were alluding to. The 10% saturated fat cap, which was not adjusted in this document. But protein was brought up by 50%, which I think is great. And I think they removed the total fat cap, which I think is great. Um, and they pretty much said every meal should have protein should be prioritized, which I think is a good message. Every meal, there should be no sugar at that meal, no processed carbohydrates at that meal, and you should avoid processed foods. I mean, it's a strong, strong message. And I have to give
It's a
props to one
stunning
person.
message. Oh, go,
Yeah.
please do.
Yeah, one person who I think, helped guide the policy implementation side, and that's Callie Means, who I had previously no love for. Really, like I liked him. I was happy about the work he was doing, bringing Maha together, but I was a little bit skeptical, a little bit critical. But on this point, where he really sort of crafted the narrative and got this huge dietary guidelines through with support from the AMA, support from the AAP, two organizations I absolutely hate, and I don't think this administration likes them either. Literally, they're suing each other right now, the
Yeah.
HHS and the AAP, but they all rallied behind these guidelines. So I think that was, it's a bit of a just success, and good planning.
Well, when we say follow the science, now we're following the science. Like it has been BS. It's been like horrible data they use for the old food pyramid, and we all got obese and sick, and we see cancer rates. We see all these problems happening, and everyone kind of looks at each other like, I wonder what that is. You know, when we see that, when Star Wars came out, you look at the movie lines, and everyone was thin and healthy, and they're wearing their bell bottoms, and everything was great, and their little V-neck tight shirts. Now we can't do those clothes anymore. At least I can't. So I think when we start looking at this, you go, gosh, like the processed food and what they went up again. I mean, there's a lot of marketing and a lot of pressure. These guys got tons of money. So now what happens, Tro? What do you predict that food companies are going to start following the guidelines and go, you know what? Let's stop making these terrible foods and start making things that are
No,
healthier?
no, no, no. I already know what they're going to do because you already see it. When you go to Starbucks, what do you see? Add protein to your
Yeah, I
breakfast
just saw
latte,
that.
right? When you go to Dunkin' Donuts, add protein. I think that's going to be one of their moves. I think the other move that they're going to make is they're going to de-emphasize soda, and they're going to have like carbonated cranberry juice, carbonated pineapple juice, carbonated orange juice, right? Because now it's a real food, right? It's like not a artificial, but they're going to come up with these crafty ways to sort of, the industry is not happy. Brian, let me tell you about this. I was sitting behind, so I'm at HHS. I'm in DC, so honored to be there in a room full of just amazing people, right? And I happened to be seated around, I noticed this person, there's all these signs like that they made that says real food, so we could hold them up and rah, 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 and be sort of part of the real food thing. It was a good moment, a lot of energy in that lobby at HHS. And there's somebody in front of me who's looking for signs. And another person who's looking for signs. And, it's somebody looking for the corn symbol on the real food sign. Like I had a real food sign with eggs, and I was sitting next to Bronson, who had a real food sign that it said, steaks. And somebody was looking for the bread, and somebody was looking for the corn. And I'm like, hey, guys, why are you looking for those signs? And I asked them, who are you? Oh, we're the lobbyists for the Millers Association. We're the lobbyists for the, Large Farmers Association. And I said, well, how do you guys feel about this? And Brian, you wouldn't believe what they said. They said, quote, well, we just want, the politics to get out of our dietary guidelines. So we want to look at the science a little bit more closely.
Yeah,
That's what they
the science
said.
that supports what we're selling you. Yeah,
Yep.
it's wild. I saw a quote yesterday as Mark Paul Saladino commented on this. It was a doctor who said, these new guidelines are dangerous because people are going to think if they eat healthy foods that they won't need medicines. I'm like, that's exactly what we've been saying for so long, and that's why it's so frustrating. That's the medical, and just today, let me see if I can remember the exact quote, but I just watched this little video and he said in medical schools they're going to start implementing nutrition training because nutrition and food is the baseline of health. And we got harassed for talking about that. Your doctors don't talk about that. You're not a nutritionist. You can't come and tell us what we've been saying for 49 years is wrong. It's amazing.
I'm going to tell you that was I think these guidelines were a bit of a golden bridge, right? They gave them a way on board and out, right? They took away, even though both the documents basically said there's no evidence that saturated fat is linked with cardiovascular disease, and guess what? That's what the document said. If you read them in entirety, it's basically saying there's no need to demonize saturated fat. They maintained the cap, right? They maintained the 10%, sort of guideline, but they told people to go eat full fat dairy. They told people to go eat steaks, and this was the part that warmed my heart the most. I'm sitting there in the Humphreys building at HHS, and RFK comes up, and he says, the only people against this, and they should look deep into themselves and look at their corporate sponsors, is the AHA. The AHA, with all of their corporate sponsors, they're the only ones who have criticized it. And they said they're demonizing salt, they're demonizing meat, and they shouldn't have to.
You mean the same AHA that pushed for trans oils? They said to get
Yeah.
the they said to get that saturated coconut fat out of the popcorn, so we had to have trans fat. And then they killed everyone and said, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't do that."
Brian, can I ask you a question? So we've been podcasting here for, gosh, has it been 8 years? No, it's going to be 7 years,
Yeah, 7 years.
right? 7 years, and a little bit over 7 years. Did you think, back then we would have, let's say, vaccine guidelines that said you can talk to your doctor and come up with shared decision making? Did you think we would have the nutrition pyramid flipped upside down? I mean, these are things that you and I have talked about for I don't know how long, literally 7 years. And these are things that were so important to me. And I just want to know how you feel about seeing this week, they took away the funding from the AAP for their, pushing hormones on kids. They changed the vaccine schedule and said we need to have patients talking to their doctors about informed consent. And now they said dietary guidelines were a big lie, and we had to literally turn every bit of it around. So what do you think about it?
I would have lost every dime that I own if I bet again. I would say there's no way all these things would happen. If I had a trifecta of betting, there's no way. When I saw the new food pyramid upside down, that's Doug Reynolds' logo. That's what he was
Yeah,
talking about, right? I mean, it's incredible. He should get a
the
what is that?
royalty.
A
Yeah.
royalty for that because he exactly what he had on, that you have to turn it upside down. It's totally backwards. And so to see them do it, I'll say the surprising thing is to see red meat at the very top, the top left. So technically, Sean Baker is a leftist now, right?
Oh,
Because he's going to
jeez.
eat that left upper corner. But like,
Yeah.
that's what our government is now telling us exactly the opposite. Remember that we've been talking about this for years. When or what was it? What was that? what were they trying in Europe when they were trying to do this crazy food where you have like the size of your finger of red meat per month or something?
Yeah,
Remember
you're
that?
talking about Eat Lancet.
Eat
Yeah, they were.
Lancet. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Eat
yeah.
Lancet report.
They
And you
went
go,
around. They did it
holy
recently. They went a second
cow.
time and said, you should avoid red meat because of environmental reasons.
Yeah, it's
It's
nothing to do
better
with
for
health.
human health and better. No, they claim it's better for human health and the environment. It's just a lucky thing. Just a luck. It's the most sustainable, most environmental, and it happens to be the healthiest. Is their deluded belief.
And I'll tell you, that's what we have to do is like, look, we have to separate those things, health and global warming, all that, because you have to look at it from a standpoint. Because, I was shocked. The Sod father invited me to a conference with all the ruminant people like that raise cows, and I was absolutely dumbfounded by how much effort they put into protecting. Is their land? They don't want to destroy their own land. They're not stupid. So how much effort they put into moving the cows around, and they have special collars that will beeps and tells them to go this way, and they move them around so they don't destroy the land. And there's pictures of the land before the cows got there and now 5 years later, and it's totally improved. Like there's more grasslands, they break up the soil, they it's just incredible if you do it the right way. And I know there's some more developments coming from that standpoint, because we all want humane food too. We want it humanely raised. And so if we can put an emphasis on that, and really focus on that. So that was surprising to me that the red meat and the eggs and the cheese were way up at top, because we've been told for years, don't eat those things. And we all got fat from.
Look, I think the reality is, if you look at the food pyramid, I'm going to bring it up because you were talking about, Sean Baker, who I was also happy to see quoted by the White House. Like that moment meant a lot to me. But, if you look at the food pyramid, this is a very reasonable food pyramid. I remember Gary Fettke, who you mentioned, saying, just eat real food.
Yeah.
If you look at the entire top part of this pyramid, it is real food. Vegetables, fruits, right? A lot of green leafy cruciferous vegetables at the top, right? A lot of meat and fish and eggs and dairy at the
Olive
top.
oil right there.
Yeah, olive oil, avocado oil, right? Butter is there, so butter is not vilified. And at the bottom, you have lentils, rice, and pea and beans, and you have the
So
whole
for people who
grains
can't
at the
see, this
bottom.
is an upside down triangle. So the top of it that we're talking about is what they recommend mostly of your diet, and the bottom is the pointy part that we used to be the top of the pyramid, right? So they've totally flipped it. The very bottom part is whole grains. Remember, all the doctors and all the nutritionists said, "Oh, your diet has to be whole grain mostly." Now it's the lowest thing on there, right above processed foods, right? The only one I would probably move down is I'd move the potato down to get
Yeah,
closer
you want
to
to move
the.
the potato down? This one right here.
Yeah, I move the potato
Yeah,
down next to the peanuts, but otherwise,
yeah, the carrots and the potatoes. I would have moved down myself, but it's a good look. I think it's directionally appropriate. Somebody asked me, Brian, said, "How do you feel about?" I was like, I don't want to talk about the administration. I want to talk about the HHS. I want to talk about health and humans, and human safety, right? And health and human services. Directionally, they started taking away the COVID vaccine mandates, right? They took the COVID, they made hepatitis B vaccines a little bit more of shared decision making, right? They made a slew of vaccines more shared decision making, and they, took away the dogma out of the American Academy of Pediatrics approach to our mental health epidemic in our kids, and now, they completely fixed nutrition. I wouldn't say completely fixed, but directionally they put us in the right direction. And each one of these healthcare areas, directionally, it's in the right direction. It was a proud moment for me, Brian. I got to be honest with you. I was in a room with RFK later on that night. I got the opportunity to celebrate with RFK and Callie Means and Jan Allison, who's such a huge pioneer in the space. Who's really put together a huge coalition for metabolic health to help guide this administration, the next administration, on what science should be. and I got to meet Martin Kulldorff, the great biostatistician that led ACIP, right? And Brian, I went up to each one of them and I said, thank you for giving me and Brian and our, the courage to stand up for what was right. You being pillars of strength out there gave us courage. And what a moment it was, Brian. I wish I could have shared it with you too. I really wish, that moment we could have had together because, you've been fighting
It's the
just as hard as
fruit.
I have.
It's the fruit of the labors, Because I was thinking about when we started talking, I'm like, are there any episodes that we've done that I regret and go, yeah, we called it wrong on that one? And I really, other than having maybe some guests on that we both don't like that much, that turned out to be kind of weaselly. But other than that, I'm thinking, man, like when we start talking about mental health, we started talking about all these different things. And even, I'll tell you, I was actually myself surprised when Kennedy was talking. He said, hey, we have to
Of the
cut out
microbiome.
processed food and we have to look at the gut microbiome. Like when we start understanding, like there's way more than calories in, calories out. It's how this whole organism works. And so it's amazing. It's amazing when you realize like our gut microbiome doesn't know what to do with all these dyes and chemicals and toxins. And it's trying all the time to detox this stuff. And then we have this huge upturn in autoimmune disease and cancer. And we say, well, it can't be that. Well, it's probably a participant for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, 100%. We've talked about microbiome. The microbiome mediates the seizure protection in a ketogenic diet.
It's
The
wild, huh? That
microbiome,
was news to me too.
the microbiome mediates migraine protection, right, in a ketogenic diet. The microbiome, right, can improve the muscular development of people who are fitness training. Okay, the microbiome has been shown to prevent kwashiorkor, which is the microbiome is responsible for protecting against C. diff, right? And we know these are all like proven in medicine. Like there's no, the question I think I have is, can we modulate it? And I think you
Well, I
have
think
more
one
experience
thing
with that.
modulating it, yeah, that's one thing. But also saying, hey, if it's being destroyed by toxins, get the toxins out, let it do its thing. Because the microbiome will adjust. If you're carnivore, it's going to adjust one way. If you're vegan, it's going to adjust another way. So it will adjust to what we're eating or what we're exposed to. But the problem is when you're adding in all these toxins, I really do believe the more I'm looking at data that I'm collecting, is a lot of people go carnivore feel way better because they're not putting all the processed garbage in now. They start feeling better. But then what happens if that affects the gut microbiome long term and maybe adding a little fiber in or changing this is why, but of course we know, drinking alcohol destroys the gut microbiome, being stressed, intense, and hating the world and being worried all the time. All these things have an effect. But the other thing is the GMOs, the genetically modified, you know, products out there that, you think in Europe they don't have the same stuff that we do. They're way more strict than we are. And I have patients go to Europe and they're they're eating pasta and bread and their continuous glucose monitor looks perfect. It doesn't look like what it does at, eating pasta here or cheap restaurants that we go to.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have a country that's 3,000 miles or more long and you have to ship grains from one side to the other, or maybe you ship them from one side, mill them in another side, sell them in another side, right? Then you're going to spray, pesticides, preservatives, all these different things are interacting, right? You're going to look to store them and I think our country and the way we distribute food and the fact that it's, large sort of manufacturing and not local regenerative sort of an approach, I think that presents a huge, huge problem, right? I think the regulation is one side of it,
Well, not only
right?
that, Toro, if we're talking about that, we go, okay, how much does it cost if I'm eating my blueberries that came from, Bolivia? You know what I mean? They're coming from
Don't say Venezuela,
not Venezuela,
Yeah.
but maybe pretty soon we'll be getting it from Venezuela too. But they're coming from Guatemala. A lot of our fruits and vegetables and all that. But how much does it cost to ship all that in gas and fuel and all that kind of human labor, tires, all this stuff? And you go, what if I go down this my farmer's market right here and get the ugly looking fruit? By the way, Tor and I have talked about it, and I think you double checked me, and I've triple checked myself on this one. Apples in the store that you go to the grocery store were picked probably a year ago. They
That's
spray them with chemicals. So is that natural? If I grow my own apples, they're not going to sit there for a year. I can guarantee you that. And so those are things we have to look at and say, gosh, what's our food source like? And if we can get a good steak from a local rancher who's, I drive by them in Arizona now, they're out in their fields, they're just hanging out, eating their grass, having a good old time.
Look,
It's,
I'm gonna tell you something about the good old the local ranchers. I think one of the issues we face in America, because I've heard what you said about your, people going to Europe and like they eat some stuff and they lose weight, or maybe they're walking more. Our country's food system is completely different, completely unique, and um, and it presents problems. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the next step that this administration is looking for, having talked to some of the thought leaders sort of guiding the policy there, is how do we get people buying from their local regenerative, agriculture. If you're in the southeast, you have white oak pastures, right? They'll ship it to you guys. It's regenerative food and it's pretty competitively priced. It's not bad priced. If you're in the north, there's Walden Farms, huge cooperative of grass-fed, organic, real local ranchers, and local cattlemen, right? So, and if so if you're in the East Coast, there are these places you can go to. I'm sure in the West there's certain, similar cooperatives, Brian, but you can get good quality meat like locally, right? And it's often more humanely, treated. It's
Yeah, I think
really,
they're
and
looking at that. I think they're looking at all those things. See, how do we make it more where, the ranchers have to ship their cows off to USDA, like if they're sending all the meat to the same place. Like they should be able to do it on their own with some oversight and not contaminate with you take good care of your grass-fed cows, and now you have to mix it with all the other cows and put them in these big pens, and then so I think there's a lot of they're gonna hopefully they're gonna say we got to really look at this our food source, because like they're saying if that's the basis of health, they're saying that as far as medical schools teaching nutrition now finally, and hopefully
yeah,
now they're going to be teaching the right thing,
the
because
Maha
before
curriculum. Yeah, that's
we've had that
exciting.
debate, we go, well, they're going to teach them the wrong stuff. They're going to say all you can do is like it's how many doctors do you think are now going to have a hard time switching over to the new follow the science, right? How many doctors now who've been saying you have to eat all whole grains, now it's at the bottom, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
at the smallest one, like, are people going to be able to flip? I wonder how many people are going to be able to look at this and go, what do we do now?
I don't even know how the Dietetics Association is going to respond, because this is such a change for them that I think they'll have significant issues, right? And a
There's gonna be a
lot
lot
of
of money. You're gonna have to rip up all of your. You're gonna have to go back and change everything. There's a total flip, Tro. Like everything says low fat, low fat, low fat, based on what? Nothing. They had no data, and so that's why it's frustrating. Even when you go back to Tim Noakes' trial, when he said not to eat sugar, and the people who put him through 3 years of trial, they had no data, no expert witnesses, and the judge even apologized to him and said, this is crazy, I'm so sorry you went through this, because they had no data, and he has stacks of stuff supporting what he's saying, but it's not the official narrative, and it's a struggle, and I think a lot of the stuff we've discussed, the effects of stress, lockdowns, and those that we saw it and go, God, this is gonna be a bad outcome, and now it's a bad outcome. And people go, well, we just had to make a decision at the time. Well, you can't make a decision on the entire population without doing your own due diligence.
Yeah, look, this is a lot of research went behind it. I don't know if I already did this, but I want to thank Ben Bickman, who was part of the research team, and really his book. He was on the Dietary Guidelines committee for this document, and Ty Beal, Don Lehman, who was instrumental in increasing the protein. A lot of Jeff Folick, who was instrumental in talking about getting the statement in there, Brian. I don't know if you saw it. A lower carbohydrate diet is appropriate and scientific for people who have chronic disease, which I thought was, and this is the same week as a meta-analysis showed that a ketogenic diet improves depression in JAMA Psychiatry, Brian. So this is It was a
And we
big
were
moment
told
to
we
see
should
that.
lose our medical license because we were seeing it clinically. That's what's so frustrating. We're on the front lines. We know what we're seeing, and people said their mood's getting better. Their mood's getting better. They're happier now. They're laughing more. Like, how can that possibly be? And it was such a leap for people to understand. But when you start to understand metabolic health, insulin resistance, and we're looking at
Brian.
Parkinson's, we're looking at dementia. I mean, it's one of those things where
Well,
Jason
we
Fung
had,
made the magic pill. He was in the magic pill, and you go, this is kind of the magic pill for a lot of stuff. Metabolic health is the basis.
I was looking at that. I was thinking, Brian, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a researcher who heard our interview and actually took our interview with one of our early interviews and literally published it. They put you and me as the author. This was
Oh
in
yeah, I know exactly.
2018. Do you remember?
I
Do you
think it
know who
was
I'm
with the
talking?
alcohol abuse one.
It was an interview with a former food, pornography, and alcohol addict,
Yeah.
right? And I was thinking to myself back then, well, because we were seeing it, I was like, people are not gambling. People are not like doing pornography. What's going on?
You brought up the
It was,
pornography, and that's what really pissed everyone off. I'm like, but it's another addiction. It's
and
another
here's
way
the
to,
worst part, Brian.
yeah,
Their testosterone was going up. Their
yeah.
testosterone was going up, meaning their like masculinity, their drive was going up, and they're reporting, "I'm not gambling." I had a patient who said, "I stopped gambling. I don't know what happened. I was always playing on my phone, and I just
Well, those are
stopped."
all escapes from reality. And when your reality comes, I mean, Tro, now we have
Well,
solid
what
data
is
on
it? I
this.
think it's improving the mind. The depression was improving. That's what we were seeing. The depression, the mental health was improving. They were getting a toxin literally moved away. They were feeling so bad they needed to eat or go gambling or watch porn or whatever, do whatever, right, to feel good, and that evaporated. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really amazing. And so, sometimes, and people have to listen to this. Sometimes you're ahead of the science. You're observing, and it takes 40 years for the science to catch up. Like certain, for me, I was just thinking about this weekend. I was thinking, I'll be controversial for a minute because I can't help
You can
myself.
do it. Yeah.
But I was thinking the COVID vaccine, when people got it, they go, look, I got mine and I'm fine. Well, it's only been 3 months. Let's see what happens. Like if I start smoking and I go, look, I've been smoking for 6 months and nothing happened to me. Smoking's fine. But in 20 years, I got lung cancer and I had a stroke and heart disease. So it takes time for these things to see. And this is why it's hard when, as you know, Tro, someone's eating terrible food their whole life and then they go keto for 4 months and they go, well, they're probably gonna have a heart attack now because they ate a steak, you know? But it's that it's hard because the mind, I think once you believe something, it's super hard to step back from that and say, well, maybe saturated fat isn't bad. But because I've already said it was bad for 20 years, I can't reverse. So that's one thing for us. We were able to reverse ourselves and say, you know what? Do you remember when I said never skip breakfast or you're gonna be weak and comatose? Maybe that's not right. Because that's what we were told. We were taught those things. You have to eat 6 times a day if you're diabetic. So you keep your sugars elevated all day long instead of just elevated once or twice a day, or once we take, if we're basing our insulin dosage on how many carbohydrates you eat, why don't we just cut the carbohydrates out and you need less insulin? Like it's common sense. And one thing I'll just say, Tro, while I'm on a tirade, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker today. But one thing I will say is on that food pyramid, where does juice show up? Nowhere. I don't see it on that food pyramid. Do you?
No, no, they completely targeted added sugars, sugar sweetened beverages of all kinds. One of Jay Bhattacharya's first trials, who's the NIH director, guys, and who's so supportive of these dietary guidelines, said one of his first studies was on sugar sweetened beverage, and it showed consistently that every chronic disease worsened, right? And he had no skin in the game. It was just like, I'm just going to see what this energy source does, right? And he was surprised to see it. So he was so excited to see that these guidelines were changed. Brian, I want to read something to you. I want to read back in 2018 the transcript of our interview. I want to read just one thing here, right? It says, I've come to see a lot of different patients who are on a low carb, ketogenic, or carnivore diet. They found me on the internet. I help them with their various problems. And I started to hear from patients who changed their diet. As a result, their anxiety improved or their depressive symptoms improved, or they're able to not abuse alcohol anymore. They're telling me that they're not using much pornography. One of the things I found consistently in my patients on the ketogenic or carnivore diet is that their testosterone has gone up. I made this observation and I posted it on the internet, right? And this is when, that their depressive improves, that their depression improves, their anxiety improves. And you said, Tro, what do you think it is? The dopamine, the link between sugar addiction, and maybe their self-esteem is better. This is what you said. This is us in 2018. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and how many doctors said we should lose our licenses for discussing that? That's the craziest part to me. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, of all the people who should say, hey, if they're seeing that, maybe it's real. I don't get paid anymore if like my people aren't depressed. I mean, I don't make money on you eating real food. Jason Fung doesn't make money if you start fasting,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So it's crazy when you see go, who has vested interest? And then you have your friend who always says, yeah, guys can eat Pop Tarts all the time, and that's fine. It's like, well, it's not healthy for you still. Even if you can get away with it, it's not the healthiest thing for you. Even if you're metabolically healthy starting out, right? You're putting all these toxins, you're messing up your gut microbiome. So sooner or later, you're going to be like everyone else if you hurt yourself and stop lifting. If you have, 180 pounds of muscle mass on you with no visceral fat, sure, you can get away with way more, but it does catch up with you in time. And that's what happens why when we get older, we get insulin resistance, we get less muscle mass, more visceral fat, hormones change. And so all these people who were thin growing up and never had to worry now all of a sudden are worried.
Well, look, I mean, 100% right. Everything's individual, but I think looking at the meta-analysis data now, right, off of interventional trials, let's just review it. One, for diabetes, a ketogenic diet is more effective. For metabolic syndrome, a ketogenic diet is more effective. This is just meta-analysis data. For PCOS and infertility and bad, hormonal milieu in PCOS, a ketogenic diet is better.
Just 1 second,
Right.
just on
Yeah.
that before you keep going. My PA and I were talking. She goes, "Guess what? 3 of my patients in the last 2 weeks who had PCOS, they couldn't get pregnant, that were going through fertility previously and gave up, got pregnant on a
That's
ketogenic
amazing.
diet."
That's amazing.
It's amazing, right? You get your hormones
That's
right, and so people out
it's
there struggling, like, don't spend all this money on in vitro
forty
fertilization until
thousand
you
dollars for
change your
yep,
lifestyle.
yep, absolutely. That's amazing. That's amazing. Your PA
Three.
and yeah. I mean, but now we have meta-analysis data. This isn't just published within the last 2 weeks. We have meta-analysis data showing that it improves depression. We have interventional data from the NIH showing that it improves alcohol withdrawal symptoms. Gosh, I could keep going on and on, Brian, but the data is so when you look at this new, dietary guideline, when you look at it and you're looking at this food pyramid, you're like, how did it go completely upside down? I just want you all to know it is completely evidence based, right? This is a strong scientific basis to say eat real food, right? And particularly protein, prioritize protein, prioritize healthy fats, which include animal fats. It's a great, I'm stoked, man. I'm absolutely
You know,
stoked.
I might have missed it. Did I see crickets or grasshoppers on there? Or Beyond Beef? I didn't see any of those on there.
No, I didn't see. There was
They're
no
not on the
Beyond Beef.
recommendations. Okay,
Actually,
just making sure.
actually specifically recommended to avoid if you're going to do a vegan diet. You have to supplement. They gave those vitamins that they wanted to work with to supplement choline, B12, a lot of the things we know, DHA. Um, and but they said if you're on a vegan or vegetarian diet, to stay away from, plant-based proteins and try to stick to, eggs and yogurt if you're on a vegetarian diet, and tempeh, tofu, real protein sources if you're on a vegan diet. And I've even seen some vegans support this. The real, health-oriented vegans, I think, have supported this, guideline. Which have your patients come and told you, like, gosh, like, what? I'm curious what anybody has said to you, Brian.
I think people are surprised. They're like, that stuff you were saying, Doc, it's shocking. Like they're shocked. They're like amazed. Like they knew it, but they were amazed to see it in writing now. The government's recommending something that's reasonable. I mean, that is it's amazing. It really is, because But I think, I mean, I'm just curious to see like the SNAP program. I've been, there used to be a SNAP place next to one of the gyms I went to, and I would see what people were walking out with. It was soda, it was all boxed foods. It was like, no, I didn't see any steaks coming out of there. I didn't see any, it was all just processed garbage. And you go, that's what you're giving people as a nutrition for kids? And you think their brains aren't going to function poorly? So I think these are things that really the impact, even though I thought to bottom would never happen. We just have to educate, people until it was supply and demand type thing. But I think this is going to be a huge deal for our kids in school who can't focus, and how many, what's going to happen with ADD. And while we're talking about kids, uh, the other big, huge, massive change that we were talking about was the vaccine schedule went down from 72 shots to 11. That is
Yeah,
a massive. Now we got to follow this. Like, what kind of changes that have? What happens to autism rates? What happens
absolutely.
to
Yep.
ADD? Right, obesity, diabetes, all these things. What happens now with these changes? Because it's not just one thing. And this is where, I know a lot of people in the medical freedom movement got upset. They're like, well, what about the shots? What about this? And so you can only do so much of it. It's a lot. This is a huge, massive change. But if we get our food supply right, we're gonna see a huge decrease in chronic disease.
Absolutely. I think they are directionally improved in both. I know I had a chance to sit with the Maha sort of contingent, and I was very happy. I got to meet some of the disinformation dozen, which was interesting. I got to sit next to them and talk with them.
The
Um,
fringe epidemiologist was there too.
yeah,
Jay, Dr. J.
yeah, Jay
He was
Bhattacharya. Yeah.
fringe. One of the most decorated doctors in the history of the world was fringe at the time, who
But
was telling the truth, and he was right.
all I could sense in that room was excitement, accomplishment. On the directionally appropriate on the vaccine front, directionally appropriate going after fraud and waste and abuse, right? In CMS, and directionally appropriate in supporting our rural healthcare system, which is collapsing, right? Our rural healthcare system, and directionally appropriate on outcomes-based reimbursement at CMS, like making sure we're only paying for docs that are doing, that are having a positive impact. And now with the dietary guidelines, directionally appropriate. I don't
Yeah.
really like have a blinder to like all of the other parts of my life. Just look at healthcare. That's all I look at really. I don't know much about anything else. But when it comes to healthcare, I'm very happy with what I see. And it was a
Yeah.
proud moment for me to be in DC, Brian.
Well,
Very
what are some
proud.
changes you would like to see happening? Like now, if you go, okay, if I could tell these guys some things I'd like to see, are there any things that stand out? I know I've got one thing in my mind. I'm thinking of anything in your mind
Yeah,
for
I think
let's talk about for physicians, like the
yeah.
standard doc out there. What are some things you'd like to see change in our system?
Well, first and foremost, they made DPC, HSA, and FSA acceptable with that, which I think is
Amen.
huge.
Yeah, that's
So now
huge. So everyone come
you
to
can
us. You
use
could use your HSA money now.
Yeah, go to Brian, go to myself. We have where we take HSA. So if you want a doc that's 10 years before his time, you got two right here. You got two right here, and we appreciate you all. If you're listening to this, Brian and I, we both need you all to sign up with us. We need people who value real good docs, and we want to be of service. We're interested in metabolic health and mitochondrial health, and Brian with microbiome, and he's got a great PA out in San Diego that's a hormone expert, and certainly on our end we have Laura who's really active on the hormonal front, and Mary. So come support us, right? Come support us if you're
Wait, that
listening to
just
this.
reminds me, Tro. You never said, hey, you owe us so much money at the end of the year for like settling up for the podcast. Are we
Oh,
just
I think
behind
we're
or?
down. I think we're down this year, but I have to go check. I pulled the account, but I have to go see the
So we get to
numbers.
pay for this privilege. I gotta pay
I
Tro at the end
know
of the
we may
year,
have to
so
change.
I
We may
shouldn't have
have to
reminded
change
him.
that. You know what? You know what's sad, Brian, is I feel bad. We got roped into doing a really like no commercial podcast, and
Because of
we
Jason Fung.
well, you know what? I'm happy we did it. Honestly,
Yeah,
I'm
I am
happy we
too.
did it.
I am too.
I
Because it's
do.
not, and the point is like these people, like I've heard so many people say Tro's a grifter. It's like, what the hell's he grifting? We all took pay cuts. Like we wanted to help people, and the stuff we were talking about came out to be true. So I'm not gonna say I told you so, but I will because I enjoy saying
You
that.
could say it. You could say it, Brian. You
So
could say I told you so. You
yeah, but
know.
all those things we've been looking at going, how come I'm not healthy? We both struggle with obesity, like you're younger, so you got skinny really quick, man. And so, but I know the effort you put in, how hard you work out, all the stuff you do
Yeah.
and how much you do behind the scenes. Tro was a huge like he's done so many studies of what he's doing. He goes, I'll put the data out. He's not being like pharma saying we're going to wait 75 years to release our data. You're releasing it, putting out study after study, pushing this pathway forward because a lot of your work was part of this guideline saying, look, people are eating like this and they're getting better. And so it's hard. It's so frustrating that it takes so long for the standard of care to change. But you've been a huge like I remember sitting there, I'm like, this guy's a great story. I'd like to do a podcast. I don't want to do it by myself. And maybe we could just go like have an East Coast and a West Coast type guy. And then look at what you've accomplished, man. Like it's crazy how many lives you've impacted. Like it's like when you sit back and go, wow, like how many people we talked to that, they couldn't get off the couch. They couldn't put on their seatbelt on the airplane. They can't go on a ride. One of my guys is gonna be able to go on a ride he wanted to go on. He couldn't go on it because he was too obese, right? And now he's killing it. And one of my guys I don't know if you saw that I posted it yesterday. He went from a 43-inch waist to a 30. He's wearing his 34 jeans and he's
Wow.
almost off his insulin. He'll be off his insulin by the end of the month. And so you go, man, what an honor to be a part of that.
It is an honor, and I've been, certainly I want to make it personally, right? Like I started to pay myself a salary in the past year, and not quite there where I was at Yale, but getting close. But like God is good, Brian, and God is real good. And are we allowed to talk about God? Well, it's going on lifespan medicine, so we
Yeah,
can
talk
talk
about
about
God.
God.
Yeah. We're going to life
So
system, so we can talk
God is
about there.
really
If
good.
anyone gets upset, just turn off and you don't have to listen.
I'm coming to a point where like, I think I'm going to be okay. My family's going to be okay, and I just want to make like the medical organization that I wish I had. And we've done that. At the SMHP, there's a conference coming up in Boca Raton. If you like MAHA, if you like metabolic health, that's the place to be. Um, Helping to advance sort of Doug's vision and get to that next step. That's been important. Brian, you're not going to believe this. The SMHP has AMA PR1 accreditation through the ACCME. So we are now
Wow. I used to try to
accredited.
turn that in. They wouldn't let me. They go, no, we're not taking those.
No, now we are AMA
Awesome.
PR1 accredited, so we can teach doctors. We have a Journal of Metabolic Health. So I'm interested in growing that, and I'm also interested. That's what I'd like to see. You said what if you wave a wand, then what could you do
Oh
next?
yeah, we got on the sidebar. I
You
forgot
know,
my
is
question.
is take that and take all these docs in this community and go to and spread it to the medical schools. Every medical school needs a metabolic department, right, with a metabolic doc that emphasizes lifestyle. And the second thing I like to see is we have to grow. We have to. It's too hard now with tech companies moving into medicine, with the corporatization of medicine. Like it's too hard for the doc right now to just get out there, right? Like it's very difficult. So my second goal, and I guess is a little bit less of a goal, is to be able to help like create a great place to work for freaking every doc out there who just is tired of the system, doesn't want to be part of the system,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
that's a harder pull. But I think like year by year it gets a little bit easier, and but those are my dreams. Those are my things. Like if I could go to government and say help, it would be help us get SMHP docs and scientists in every medical school so we could unload what we've learned, and then it would be help these like centers of metabolic excellence like your practice, my practice, Phil's practice, Verda, help us grow and expand, so we can expand our sort of reach, our culture, and our approach to medicine.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Hopefully
And
they're listening,
getting us
Brian.
into med schools to give talks, let us get in there and say, hey, here's my experience for the last 10 years of what we're doing. And I think that's important. And for me, if I can wave a magic wand, I would take the conflict of interest out of medicine. I think the biggest thing is we're looking at these vaccines and the doctors get a kickback. I know at my old practice, I'll tell you, I remember when it was flu season, they go, how many vials we get? We got to, we're going to make a profit on this. How much can we bill insurance for? If you give it in this arm, you get this much. And you start realizing, like during COVID, I think really took the blinders off when you realize doctors were saying, well, if I don't get 80% of my people vaccinated, I don't get my bonus this year, right? And the insurance companies are all in on it. We got to get rid of that. I should not have any financial benefit. That's why I don't sell supplements. I'll tell you, go get this down at Walmart or whatever, right? Because if you it's an automatic if I make $10 on every prescription I give you, I'm going to give you more prescriptions. Naturally, that's human nature. And I think that's one of the big problems we got to figure out. Like doctors were firing their patients because they were going to lose their bonus. We should never be motivated that way. We should be motivated by, and also doctors are saying, hey, if you don't give someone a statin drug, then you lose your bonus. So doctors are very and people have to understand most doctors are massively in debt. I was $500,000 in debt, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
took me, I'm 56 now. I was 54 when I paid off my medical school loans.
Oh
And I was
wow.
paying not just the minimum, I was paying overpaying all the time. But you
Yeah.
realize these young doctors, do you think they're going to question the system they're in if they're working for
No,
Kaiser,
no,
that
they're
they're
gonna
going to
collect a
say,
paycheck
you're
and
going to
pay their
collect a
bills.
paycheck?
Yep.
It's too dangerous to
Yep.
do what Tro and I did. The only reason we could do it is we were independent. How many doctors have we asked to come on? They go, I can't. My
And we
right?
were up for the struggle. It was I'm sorry, like a divinely inspired. Like I remember you, Brian, and you were like, I can't keep doing this. I remember when your face blew up. Like you
Yeah.
could like you didn't need any more signs. You're like, I try to get out of here. And
Yeah.
here's the thing. I knew the moment I was out of here. I was like, it was a corporate. I was in a hospital based practice, and they're renegotiating my salary, right? And I'm like, what is going on here? And then I have a doctor telling me, don't have your patients sit down when they get in. Just keep them riled up and take their blood pressure so it's high, so you can justify bringing them back and doing an EKG. I mean, it was these type of things that it's like, what is gotten, like, there's something really wrong here, right? When I talk to an assisted living home, we have this assisted living home project that we've got a grant for. Hopefully, we'll be off the ground pretty soon. But I talked to an assisted living home, and you know what they said, Brian? They said, we don't want you here. We don't want somebody who's going to get patients healthier. We don't want to lose our patients. And honestly, if you get them healthier and you make them need less drugs, one, we get kickbacks because we're partnered with a not-for-profit that's abusing the 340B program. We get a kickback from the drugs that we dispense. And if you get them healthier, we have to down code them, which means we're going to get paid less. So he says, if you want to do your program, you're going to have to pay me. You're going to have to pay me. And Brian, I thought to
Yeah.
myself, what a
It's
perverse system. And
crazy. And
God,
this is, yeah.
let me tell you, I am so thankful that there's a person like Hal Cramner who
Yeah.
was like, Tro, we're going to take you with open arms. We want to get people healthy.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like that there's so few. When I first met Hal, I'm like, okay, what's his, and then you start realizing he wants to get people better. He bugs the heck out of me, calling me like, what about this guy? What can we do to help him? How can we help this guy? But it's so important. I mean, people like that's what we need when you really can invest in other people and you're in, like for us, financially, we took a hit professionally and social wise. There's no question about it. Like we know we're doing the right thing and our
Yep.
patients are getting healthier. We're not depressed. Like patients come in, they're joking and talking and they don't have, when someone's miserable and can't sleep and they're depressed all the time and anxious and struggling with pornography and alcohol and all these things, if you can help them, it's like it's bringing freedom. You can hear the chains hit the ground, that they've been prisoners of these things or prisoners to cookies or prisoners to sourdough bread or whatever. And when you see someone go, yeah, I skipped lunch yesterday. I'm fine. I feel great. And it's like so rewarding. But so many doctors, they don't see that because it's just another drug. No one ever says, oh, thank you so much for putting me on insulin. Oh, everything's great. My sugars might look better, but they don't feel great. And so it's just such a we've just gotten to that point, and I think seeing that quote yesterday, that doctor saying people think if they eat real food they won't need medicines anymore. It's like, what is wrong with you? They don't need medicines because they made themselves healthy. It's not a medicine deficiency that we're suffering from. It's just like the system, um I think that all we can do is reach the young doctors, and they're going to convince the older doctors, and
Yep.
you know,
Here's the problem: the financial incentives are too much. We need, like you and I, need support so we can go hire the army of. We need the listener right now to come book with Brian and me, and we
yeah,
need to
support us
grow
on
this
Patreon. That
culture.
would help.
You
So
know.
we're not dilling out
Yeah,
products on
Patreon
here.
too. Oh my God, I don't even want to look at that. Yes, we could use your support. If you're a listener right now and you're like, how can we help these guys? They were right 8 years ago, and I'm grateful. Go to Patreon, donate to us. That would be a huge help. Or come to our practices, come
And
to
so
our PAs,
if we ever
go on
have
the
a
floor.
surplus, we donate it to charity. So we don't. It's just not us having to pay the editors and all that kind of stuff out of pocket when we're making less money than we used to.
Yeah,
But anyways, these are all big things because we do it so we can bring the message out. So if this message does resonate with you, if it's helped you over the years, if it's helped other people, please, that would be super helpful if you give us $3 or something we can use towards, you know, upgrading our lighting and cameras and all that kind of fun stuff. But anyways, that's the besides the point. The big point is we have major satisfaction right now seeing what's happening to say, gosh, first do no harm. That's our job as physicians. Our job is to assess risk and benefit. We can't just go by what the TV says or what the politicians say. We have to go look, what's the best thing for the patient in front of me? And that's one thing I'm proud of. Tro and I have stood up to that and said, look, come after us. We have the data where, we have enough people. And part of the reason we started this podcast, the Life's Best Medicine podcast, was so that we can show that there's doctors around the world focusing on metabolic health with outstanding outcomes. And other doctors can't say that.
yeah, 100%. We have the data to support us. We have our own clinical data. I put out there the painstaking. People are like, "You're a grifter." I'm like, you realize, that I paid to publish my own studies. I've taken time out to publish our studies, to our research, to do work on guidelines, to give presentations. Like I've never taken an honorarium from anybody. I've always said donate it. So
Yeah,
I
and then we
mean,
pay. We're flying there. We're staying in a hotel. Oh, the hotels usually recover for.
yeah, I'll let them pay for my lodging, but that's about it. That's about it. Listen, Brian, I have to head out to a patient. I don't know if you have to head out, but it's been a pleasure, on Life's Best Medicine / Low Carb MD to talk about the dietary guidelines in the last 8 years. What a monumental week! What a monumental moment! And it was a magical moment to be there with RFK, Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Marty Makary, and everybody. It was just a Martin, just a great
Coldorf.
moment. Yeah,
Yeah, and
and
I
and
think
Kaylee Means.
I think what this does really is gives us hope because for so long we just shook our head saying no one gets it. It's never going to change. I didn't believe it would change, really. I mean, this is really, really remarkable to see that people are actually looking at the science instead of emotion, what people have said, all that. It's like, let's look at the data. And once they did, it was irrefutable. And so it's exciting. And I think really the impact is going to have on kids growing up, nutrition. If you want to save Medicare, like people are thinking, how can we be more efficient on Medicare? How do we lower drug costs? Well, the lowest way is not to need the drugs. The best thing is reverse, disease or prevent it. And
Yeah,
then you don't need
yeah,
drugs for everything. And I think
absolutely.
it's a huge deal. It is really because, ultimately, the frustrating thing that we know as a fact looking at the American Diabetes Association is like they're funded by pharma on this side and big food on this side. So how can they possibly say eat real food and don't eat this guy who's sponsoring me and giving me money every year? That's why we don't have sponsors on the show too, is because we don't want to be biased in what we're saying because of we're making money. If we upset someone who's giving you a bad product, then we lose our sponsorship, right? So I think it's really important that we steer clear of those things and really
Yeah.
just having the support of our listeners. That's what we bet on from day one. And we weren't right for a lot of years, and then we kind of balanced out. So hopefully we can make that happen, Tro.
Amen. Thank you for supporting us, Patreon, on Patreon, and supporting us in our practices. Appreciate you all, and Brian, it's always an amazing pleasure.
Yeah, Tro, thanks. And thanks for all you do. All the recognition you're getting now is very well earned. You've worked your butt off, sacrificed a lot, and it's an honor to partner with you on this podcast.
Ditto.